Thanks so much for having me, Chris. It is really exciting to be here because another thing Chris didn't mention was when we first met, uh, my group and I were just starting advocacy work on laneway suites. He had a group that was starting advocacy work on relieving parking regulations in the city. And people thought we were both crazy at the time. But here we are, like 10 years later, no parking regulations, as of right, laneway suites everywhere. We did it. And that's frankly because of groups just like this. It's really exciting to be here because everyone here actually gives a shit about housing and we're actually doing something about it. And that didn't exist a decade ago. Thanks to Chris, it's really a privilege to be a collaborator of his and with all of you. And happy to chat with you today. So just to give a little bit of background, in addition to being one of the co-founders of Lanescape, I also have an architecture firm called, very creatively, Craig Race Architecture. And in both of those firms, we have three core competencies that we apply to all of our work. One is sustainability, specifically passive sustainability. We don't do windmills and PV panels. We do really good building envelopes that improve comfort and maintenance and operation of buildings. Also, we're very focused on contextual design. We try to be adventurous with our work, but we really try to craft it to fit into the neighborhoods where we're designing. And then also creative infill projects, if that wasn't obvious, just by my presence here today. Everything we do is trying to jam more people and more rental opportunities into neighborhoods where there are a bunch of deeply entrenched NIMBYs that don't want to see it because we love to fight those people. So if you have a project that meets those needs, call me. And the sectors we apply it to are obviously laneway garden suites. We do a lot of custom homes. Multiplexes have become really big for us for the last 5 years or so. And especially since last week, are really starting to pick up. And we've also started to dabble into some small mid-rise and infill apartment buildings. So that's really the sector that we're focused on. I always like to kind of give the history of how Lanescape started. So for anyone who doesn't know, Lanescape is a design build firm that myself and two others established where we get approvals and construct laneway and garden suites all over Toronto. It actually started as an advocacy group, as Chris mentioned, and it took us 4 years of actually talking to councillors and having them laugh in our faces before the bylaws got passed. When that did get passed in 2018, we converted to a fee-for-service architecture firm. My days of advocacy and my bleeding heart are done. My heart is healed, and I work for money now, sadly. But I also like to help anyone who does have advocacy efforts in mind, so don't be afraid to reach out to us if you have missing middle work you're on. And then most recently, we started doing construction as well. We provide a property assessment service for people, so we've actually done site assessments for over 5,000 properties in Toronto. Those are a free service we do to help spread information, correct information to homeowners that are interested in this. Because one of the issues is that there's a high barrier to entry to any kind of development. Even though bylaws have changed to make it as of right, lower cost, more accessible to the everyday person, you still need to have an expert to get you through the process. That's what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. I should also mention we use the stats from those property assessments to feed back to City Hall and try to improve policies whenever we can. Yet another reason, if anyone has advocacy work, especially related to laneway or garden suites, give me a call because we have stats to help support any kind of progress. So I was sort of asked to talk about working with an architect on these types of projects. Hopefully most of you know more or less the process of working with an architect, but what a lot of you probably don't know is that there are massive pitfalls that can cause serious problems. Is that better? Can everyone hear me now? Sorry. So I'm kind of just going to give you a few coaching points that I seem to give to every single person that calls me, because a lot of architects think they can do this and can't. A lot of homeowners think they can do this and they make mistakes. A lot of developers think they have a team that's capable of this, but they're maybe new to laneway suites or new to multiplexes. Multiplexes especially are something that has a new policy as of last week that people are just starting to learn. So here's some points to give to anyone, you or your clients, that are starting to dabble into this. With laneway and garden suites, The first one is don't go to committee of adjustment. That's a recurring theme with our work right now. I see so many people go to committee for like a stupid soft landscaping percentage change or something. Just don't do it. Comply with the bylaws. We've started over 200 laneway and garden suite projects, and I've only been to committee, I think, about 8 times for any of our projects. And in each of those cases, it was a really weird, unique lot. So just don't do it. You don't need to. It's not worth it. Forget about it right now. Sean Galbraith is nodding, but he and I both know we're losing a lot of work by doing this, but it's still the right thing to do. Also, don't ever pay development charges on them. I've seen people fall into traps with City Hall where there's already a multi-unit house in the front. If you've got 4 units in the front or less, you do not have to pay development charges on a laneway or garden suite. If someone tells you otherwise, give me a call or figure out how not to, because you don't need to. That does change if you have more than 4 units in the main house, but that's the only circumstance. Next up, emergency access is critical. I've seen people buy properties and think they can build a laneway or garden suite, and then find out that the fire department can't get to the garden suite and they can't do it. One way you can figure out if a site is possible, whether you own a site or are prospecting, is to call Lanescape. Those free property assessments I was talking about help you understand if it's possible or not. But that's a big one, especially if you have a client who's looking to do a laneway or garden suite. That's the first thing you should be checking for them. Next one are trees, which are usually something we can work around, but are a huge pain in the ass. They take a lot of time and have a lot of subjectivity in whether or not you can build within a tree protection zone. Anyone who's an architect here already knows this. So just be careful. And especially if you're prospecting, make sure you get emergency access, make sure there are no trees around, and then buy the property. Or call us first. Like I said, free assessments from Lanescape. Send the address to info@lanescape.ca, self-plug. Next one is more related to multiplexes, which, like I said, are very rapidly changing. Earlier this year, the development charge bylaws changed so that you used to have to pay development charges on them unless you had sneaky loophole methods to avoid it, like we used to have to do. That's no longer the case. 4 units in a main house, totally exempt from development charges. Go do it right now. But there's a lot more than that to think about when you're doing these. One is that I always see people putting in common amenities into the buildings, usually a shared entry or a shared staircase or something. That is a horrible idea. If an architect ever shows you a plan for a multiplex where there's a shared entry or any kind of shared space between units, tell them to get rid of it. We do 4 units, we do 6 and 8 plexes with no common space inside the building. The reason for that is twofold. One is your maintenance and operation is going to be a pain in the butt. But 2 is that your rentable efficiency goes way down as soon as you do that, because each of those units now needs a second exit within the building. It's totally possible to avoid it. You don't need to do it, and if someone tells you otherwise, please call me. Like I mentioned, laneway suites and garden suites are eligible for DC deferrals. That's even if you're doing a 4-plex in the front. We have a lot of clients that are looking at properties where they can do 4 units in the front and a laneway or garden suite in the back. Getting to that 5 units does make you eligible for commercial financing, so your takeout's very attractive with that scenario, and you can avoid all development charges as long as you strategize your approvals properly. So if someone tells you you have to pay DCs or you're not eligible for commercial financing, that's not true. You can do it now. And finally, the big one that just changed last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, is that you can do 4-plexes pretty much as of right anywhere in the city. So we've got clients that are starting projects right now, and they are not going to committee of adjustment for a 4-plex and a laneway or garden suite in the back. You might still want to go because the bylaws that got passed are far from perfect, but you don't have to. So anyone who's a developer who's prospecting properties, do your homework. You can buy sites where you can get a permit within a number of months from acquiring the property and be under construction same year. That didn't exist 2 weeks ago. So hopefully those are things that are going to help you all understand how to prospect for properties. If you are working with an architect and they're making any of these mistakes, be sure to check them on it. Or call me. We always like to help homeowners as just part of our Bleeding Heart philosophy that is getting less and less active every year. But we're always willing to help people figure out how to get around these issues. If you see any of this on any of your projects, we'll help you figure it out, and hopefully you can have a much easier path to as of right infill density here in Toronto. Thanks very much, everybody.